Nicole, how are you? Welcome. So good to see you. I haven't seen
I'm
you.
good. It's good to see you and it's good to be seen. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, we had you scheduled before, but you had a false alarm on your imminent birth.
Yes, I
So
had a
we had to
baby.
reschedule. We figured give you time to have the baby, and so it's been 4 months, I think, since the baby.
Yes,
How is that going? And um, give us an update on that. Come on.
he's good. He's good. I had a baby boy on May 27th. So I thought he was making his debut the day that we were going to have this Frontline conversation, and he changed his mind. But he's great. He's a big boy. He was 10 pounds, 2 ounces when he was born, and he has kept that momentum going. And happy, healthy, doing his job, keeping us up every night, and he's number 5 for us. So we have a full house.
Number 5 child.
Yes.
Good for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
what I have. I have 5 children. It's
Yeah, that's
keeps
right.
you busy.
Yeah.
Keeps you busy, doesn't it?
I wanted to join the club. That's what
Yeah,
it
there you
was.
go. There you go. And what's his name?
Devin.
Devin. That's nice. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations to you.
Thank
And
you.
everything's going well. So let's talk about you. Let's talk about Generation Hope and how you got started and where you hope to go. So can you give us some little background on your story and what led you to found Generation Hope?
Yeah. So I started Generation Hope, a nonprofit organization, in 2010. And the story of the organization is very kind of aligned with my own personal story. So we help teen moms and teen dads get their college degrees in the DC metro area while we help their children get ready for kindergarten. And we now do national work to advocate for the needs of parenting college students all across the country. And I lived that mission. I got pregnant my senior year of high school, and I was college bound, honor roll student, involved in a ton of extracurricular activities, taking AP classes. When I discovered my pregnancy, I had just been accepted into a bunch of different colleges. And, I had this stack of college acceptance letters on one side of my dresser and a positive pregnancy test on the other. And it was really hard to see how those two things could kind of come together. How was I going to be able to go to college with a baby? And I didn't have anybody in my network or my community, my school, who had gotten pregnant and had gone on to college. Most of the girls that I knew in that situation either disappeared or they continued working in retail jobs or food service. And no one I knew had ever gone on and earned a post-secondary credential. So it was very much uncharted territory for me. And as much as I was really accomplished as a student, people said, your life is over. You're not going to go to college. You're not going to be successful. And over the next,
people told you that.
Yeah.
People told you you're not going to be successful. Let's just give it up. Wow.
Yeah. People said that. And that's the common response, unfortunately, for many young people who who find themselves in this situation. So that's what I heard. And it was, some of the teachers and administrators who were my biggest cheerleaders were now, some of my biggest critics. So it was really tough.
Wow.
Yeah. To be pregnant, to be trying to graduate from high school and to try to figure out, how I could keep going after high school.
So what did you draw on to basically ignore all these people who had been your advocates and now were your critics? I mean, that took a lot of courage, I think.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, there were days where I was my worst critic, right? Like it was the outside voices. It was also internally me thinking, am I crazy to try to, think that I could go to college? But I think even at a young age, I knew that if I was going to be able to provide for my daughter, I was going to need a college degree. That was something that I knew even then. And so that's what motivated me, to push through a lot of those doubts was knowing that the alternative of going to college was going to really leave my daughter and I probably on the streets, not being in a good situation financially. And so I wanted the best for her. And I figured, let me just try. It might be crazy. It might be, completely out of my grasp, but let me put one foot in front of the other.
So what support did you have back then? I mean, were you all on your own?
I was pretty much on my own, especially leading up to going to college. And part of that was, I had this many people say to me, you know, you had all these things going for you. You came from a 2-parent middle-class home. Both your parents were college educated. Like, how did you find yourself in this situation? I mean, the first answer to that is that a teen pregnancy can happen to anyone. That's number one. But number two, I had a financially secure home. I mean, we weren't rich by any means, but middle class, you know, family, but emotionally turbulent home. And that fighting that happened, you know, constantly in my house growing up took a toll on our family. It took a toll on me. And so when I found out I was pregnant, you kind of have a crisis and you throw that on top of another crisis, you know, and it just kind of exploded. And so I ended up leaving my parents' home. I was kind of living place to place with my boyfriend and my daughter's father, and couch surfing. Sometimes we slept in the car in the high school parking lot. Sometimes we didn't have food to eat. It was very difficult. And, you know, when I found out that I had been accepted into the College of William and Mary, I was 8 months pregnant and living day to day in a Motel 6. So nothing about my life, you know, said college. So that year, I took a year off after high school. That year leading up to going to college was really tough. And the support was kind of pretty pieced together in different places. I had to kind of be my own support system in the beginning.
So you were accepted to William and Mary.
Yeah.
And you went down there, obviously. And how did that go? What kind of accommodations did they make? And what did you have to go through to make it work?
Yeah, so, you know, when I started as a full-time freshman, my daughter was a little under 3 months old, and I stepped foot on campus and they really didn't know what to do with me. You know, I was off campus as a freshman, which was pretty unheard of at William and Mary. They didn't have any sort of supports in place or accommodations for parenting students. It was just not something that they kind of anticipated at William and Mary. And so when I came on my first day for orientation, I was lumped into a orientation group for transfer students, which didn't really fit my situation because none of them were freshmen, and, you know, they were all living on campus. And so I eventually kind of found my own way and didn't end up kind of navigating through that first day on campus with them because it wasn't really applicable. So I honestly like had to figure it out on my own. I had the map of campus and had to kind of try to figure out where all my classes would be and how to, you know, connect the dots. It was definitely an isolating experience to be a parenting student and low income, and to be one of very few Black students at William and Mary. All of those things were kind of layering on top of each other. And so it was incredibly tough, definitely.
So did it get better, I hope?
It got better in the sense that I made connections. So I ended up, I mean, my freshman year, I was, my boyfriend and I were living in Newport News. And if you know anything about the Tidewater area, you know, I was living in Newport News, dropping my daughter off with his sister to watch while I went to school. And she was in Portsmouth. And then I would go from Portsmouth to Williamsburg. This was every day that I had class. So I was commuting about 150 miles to drop her off at daycare and get to campus each day. So it was crazy, you know, trying to make sure I had enough gas. Would the car make it for that commute? So freshman year was really tough. I ended up leaving my daughter's father the summer of my going into my sophomore year, and was able to move into a family housing apartment on campus. And that apartment was not intended for me as an undergrad with a baby. It was really intended for adjunct professors and assistant professors. But I advocated for myself and I found a loophole, was able to get into that apartment. And I think that really helped me get more connected with campus. I ended up making a great group of friends who essentially became aunties, you know, to my daughter, and met my husband my junior year, and felt a little bit more connected to the campus community. Again, there weren't any supports in place really for me as a parenting student, but I did feel like I had some connections that that helped to make me feel a bit more welcome. But financially it was tough. I mean, I was making decisions between diapers and textbooks for class, and trying to keep the heat on in the winter, and, you know, the impossible task of finding high quality, affordable childcare, and you know, all the things that you know, even food, keeping food on the table for my daughter and I remember sometimes subsisting off of a granola bar so that my daughter could have what she needed. I would go without in terms of food for myself. So every day was this constant exercise and survival. And that was just basic needs, never mind, going to a prestigious school like William and Mary and trying to keep my grades up and all of that. So it was tough. It was really, really tough.
So how many times did you think about just stopping? I mean, the freshman year sounds horrific. I mean, how many times do you think about, I just can't do this anymore? And what led you to keep going?
Yeah, I would say frequently. There were
Yeah.
days where I was like, I don't know that I could physically do this anymore. I don't know that, emotionally it was really hard. It was hard, just not having people to talk to who could understand what it was like. I would be in class and other students would be talking about going home or going to the dining hall and hanging out at the library and studying. And I was going home and I was cooking dinner and I was bathing my daughter and getting her, reading her a book and getting her to bed, and then trying to find some time to study in the middle of the night. So I just lived a very different life. So it was very isolating and difficult physically, emotionally, all of those things. But again, I mean, there was no plan B. If I didn't get my degree, there wasn't this other, equally beneficial, solution over here that was going to put food on the table for my daughter. It was like, either I get this degree here at William and Mary now, or we're going to really have a hard time and my daughter's going to suffer. And so that was the motivation, was just like, I've got to do this for her. I've got to make sure that she has what she needs.
And did you graduate in 4 years?
I did. I graduated in 4 years. I graduated with high honors. My daughter walked across the graduation stage with me, and just a surreal, incredible
really
moment. Yeah. Yeah. So it was.
So what year did you graduate? Where you graduate?
I graduated in 2003.
So 7 years later, you formed Generation Hope. And
Yes.
What did you do in those 7 years, and what led you to found Generation Hope?
Yeah. So when I first came out, I mean, I can say even when I was sitting in commencement, I think the Queen Noor of Jordan was our commencement speaker. I mean, talk about just wow, right? Like, I'm just like in this place and have achieved this thing that people tell you is impossible. Hearing this incredible commencement speaker, just an amazing place to be. But also in that moment, I felt sad because I knew that my story was rare. I knew that I had, achieved something that so many other young parents and parenting college students could achieve if they had the proper supports. And so I graduated.
Had you reconciled with your parents?
Yes. I should say my mom was in the delivery room when I gave birth to my daughter. And that was it. It was like, that's all she wrote. They were in love with each other. Like, it's like that. So my mom, yes. So my mom was one of my biggest cheerleaders and still is. And so moved to the DC area. I started working on my master's degree. I got a master's in public policy from George Mason University. And then I started working for an insurance company and was doing PR for them, and flying on the private company jet, meeting with the VPs of this billion-dollar company. It was very clear how much my life had been transformed by my college degree. But
so I'm sorry, where were you from?
I went to high school in the Tidewater area in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
But I was born in New England. I was born in Connecticut.
Wow.
And lived like half my childhood in New England. And then in the middle of my 7th grade year, moved down to Virginia Beach and went to middle and high school in Virginia Beach.
And you came up to DC for graduate school?
I came up to DC for grad school. My parents also, by that time, were living in Alexandria.
Oh, okay.
And so moved close to, to be with them, closer to family. And so I really wanted to start an organization that was dedicated to helping young parents become college graduates. At first, I was looking to volunteer with an organization doing this work, and none existed in the DC region. Very, very few across the country. And there was this statistic that fueled my fire, that less than 2% of teen moms earn a degree before age 30. And
Hmm.
that floored me, because I knew that I was one of the rare 2% of parents, of mothers who had actually earned a post-secondary credential before age 30. And I knew we needed to change that. And so that's really where Generation Hope came from, was recognizing there was this critical gap in the way that we're trying to solve poverty. We're trying to figure out how to help families experience economic mobility. But no one was really talking about parenting college students, teen parents, any of those things.
So what was it like starting a nonprofit, founding a nonprofit?
Yeah, well, I can tell you,
Where'd you get your money?
that was the question. Where are we going to get this money? And I wish I could tell you that Bill Gates was knocking on my door and saying, you've got a great idea, but that's not at all how it happened. It was very much a grassroots effort. I remember writing our business plan in my husband's man cave, conceptualizing what this organization was going to look like and thinking through the supports that would have been beneficial to me, and also knowing more about the field and teen parents more broadly, what would be beneficial. And a lot of it, I remember our early days was just recruiting board members. And then, we met with a PR firm called Rheingold that believed in us before we even had our 501c3, believed in my vision. And I remember them saying, it's kind of like the Kevin Costner movie, the baseball movie, if you build it, they will come. And, because I'm like, we need this funding to be able to do this work. And Jack Benson, the partner there, said, look, if you want them to invest in something, you've got to show them what they're investing in. And so that meant we had to do everything in kind, leaning on our board of directors, pull it together on a shoestring budget to say, this is what it is, but here's what it could look like. And that's really what we had to do. We had to get as much as we could donated. I was constantly out in the community, meeting with people, shaking hands, telling people about the vision that I had for the organization, and a lot of hard work and like building it brick by brick by brick.
And how did you get referrals for your students? You can set up a nonprofit, but you don't have the students to help.
Yeah. So one of the things that was important was like, we wanted to introduce ourselves to other nonprofits. That was a big thing, is making sure that other organizations that were serving this population in a different capacity knew that we were here, that we were ready to support any of the teen parents that they had that might be interested in going to college. We also started creating partnerships with the public school systems in the region. So we have an official partnership with DCPS and with Fairfax County Public Schools, for example, and also with the colleges, getting on the colleges' radar, letting them know that we existed as an organization, hopefully getting our program listed as a scholarship opportunity with their students who might be parenting. So a lot of it was, again, I had to go out and shake as many hands as possible and tell our story and try to connect with people and do a lot of networking to raise awareness about what we do.
How many students did you start with?
7. Started with 7 moms. And today we're at 122 teen mothers and fathers.
All from this region? Yes,
DC, Maryland.
Going to school wherever.
They actually are all going to school in the DC metro region. They're at 20 different 2- and 4-year schools across the region.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you started this in 2010, you've come, it's an incredible story. Your life story is an incredible story.
Thank you.
Yeah, very inspiring. But in 11 years, you've come light years really from where you began. And you've written a book. You just got some very prestigious award. So talk to us about that. What was it like writing the book, and what lessons do you have for us?
Yeah, writing a book, so Pregnant Girl came out in May, same month that I gave birth to Devin. So it was a busy May. But I actually had a vision for the book quite a while ago, about 13 years ago. I had graduated from William & Mary and got my first job and was meeting coworkers, and you tell each other kind of your journeys, and I was sharing more about my experience, and my coworkers were like, Nicole, this is something that people need to hear about. Like,
Yeah.
most people don't think about this when they think about teen parents and teen pregnancy, and you need to share your story. And I'd always loved to write. I'd been a writer since a very young age. And so I thought, well, let me, see if I can write a book about my experience. And I started writing the book, and I started talking to different literary agents and publishers about, what I wanted the book to be about. And I had so many doors slammed in my face. I had literary agents and publishers who said, one, you don't have a platform. Like, nobody knows who you are. Two, people don't want to hear about teen parents being successful. Like, that's not something that people buy. That's not something that people are interested in. And so after so many attempts, I said, you know what, I'm going to shelf this for now. And then in the meantime, I grew a nonprofit, grew an organization. And in 2018, I was at a training for nonprofit organizations on scaling. And the facilitator was talking about one of the ways that nonprofits can scale is to inspire other people to do the work. And one of the vehicles for that is a book. And I was like, okay, I have kind of the first draft of a book on the shelf somewhere. I wonder if this is an opportunity, for me to kind of revisit that. And so that's what I did. I kind of dusted off that first draft, and I started talking to people on my board about how I was looking to publish. One of my board members connected me with someone who connected me to my literary agent, Joanne B. Jarvie. And she just immediately believed in it. And she said, I love it. I love what you're doing at Generation Hope. This is amazing. And we started shopping the book around at Beacon Press, which is an incredible social justice publisher. And they have White Fragility and James Baldwin and all of these incredible people that are among their authors. They also said, yes, like, we love it. We love this. We love what you're doing. And it just fit. It was just like a perfect fit for Pregnant Girl. And I had about the first third of the book written. Of course, 13 years later, you're like, I hate this entire draft. So I was like, ew. But it gave me a starting point. And so in the pandemic, I was writing Pregnant Girl, and just kind of plowing along and trying to, a lot of late nights, a lot of weekends of typing away and editing and figuring out how to say things, and finally turned in my first draft to the publisher in May. And then over that course of that year, we were editing and kind of bringing it to fruition. So but it was what was really important to me in Pregnant Girl is that I wanted it to be vulnerable. I wanted it to be transparent, because I think that's where you get connection. That's where people identify with some of the universal things that connect us all. And that's really important when you're talking about something as stigmatizing and polarizing as teen pregnancy. People have very strong reactions and oftentimes really quick judgments about teen parents. And so wanting people to connect on these very universal themes of family and love and, trying to overcome challenges. And so I had to be pretty vulnerable in writing the book. Sometimes that was hard. It was hard to kind of put myself back in really tough situations, whether it was with my parents or with my daughter's father, or even at William and Mary, but I think it paid off. I've heard from a lot of people that it's the kind of story that really pulls you in. And I think that's what we need if we're going to create the change that needs to happen.
And how did Generation Hope deal with the pandemic? I mean, how did that affect your services? And we've been through 18 plus months of this now, and we're still dealing with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, the big headline is that our population is a population that's been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. We're working with, all parenting students, 90% are students of color, vast majority are low income, 65% are first generation college students. They're frontline workers, they're essential workers. They are definitely, as you're looking in the headlines about, the different populations that have really carried the burden of this pandemic, that's our students. We have students who are homeless, and they were homeless prior to COVID, and are experiencing housing and food insecurity and all of that. Now you have a global pandemic thrown on top of that. It becomes almost impossible to stay in college or to keep a job. You don't have childcare. One of the big things that we've tried to really increase awareness about is the fact that these students, parenting students, were in crisis way before COVID-19. All of these things that we're talking about, I can't find affordable childcare, I can't put enough food on the table for my family, housing insecurity, staying in college, being able to earn a family sustaining wage. These are all things that parenting students and our students at Generation Hope were up against way before COVID-19. And the pandemic has just exacerbated these issues for our population. So what I think one of the beneficial things that Generation Hope had going for us coming into the pandemic is that we were already a holistic wraparound support program. So there really was nothing that our students could bring to us that we weren't ready to help them navigate through. So definitely we're focused on education, but on any given day, we're dealing with all the ancillary things that could derail one of our students from pursuing and completing their degrees. Domestic violence, for example, one of the biggest issues that we are helping our scholars navigate. We have a mental health coordinator, manager on our staff who is able to help our students navigate any mental health challenges that come up. We connect our students really quickly with domestic violence organizations that can help them with, housing, legal issues that come up in the event of a domestic violence issue. So we have all sorts of supports that were already in place prior to COVID that have proven to be really critical to helping students get through this pandemic and stay in college. And I think that's one thing that's benefited us as an organization, as opposed to if we were singularly focused on, say one aspect of our students' lives, we would have had to really say, okay, now we have to, create these new programming supports. We really didn't have to do that. We had to step them up. So we had an emergency fund already going into COVID-19. We decided we were going to give out even more emergency dollars to our students. So we gave out about $60,000 in emergency grants to our students during COVID-19. So that's what a lot of it has been about, listening to our students, ramping up our supports, and really helping the larger community understand the unique needs of our population.
So let's talk about your support system that you have. Let's say, someone comes to you, they're pregnant or just had a baby and they want to go to college, and take us through that. Take us how you support them and the things you offer them.
Yeah, so our students typically come to us after already graduating from high school or earning a GED. Many times they've made the decision already that they want to go to college. Sometimes we'll hear from people, well, should you be, pushing college onto students? We don't get into that. Our students come to us already having made that decision that they want to go to school after high school, they want to go to college. So they apply to our program. They can be a rising freshman, they can be a sophomore or junior. Most of our students are coming to us as rising freshmen. Some have a few credits under their belt, but for many, it's the first time that they're going to college. And they have already completed their FAFSA, they've already completed their college applications for the most part. If they haven't, we also provide some supports to help them do that, but many of them have already done that. They submit an application and an essay and some references. We always do an in-person interview with our students, and within COVID, we've done that virtually. But the idea is that we know that sometimes it's hard to really assess kind of a student just from their paper application. And so we want to have a conversation with them and get to know them a little bit more. And then once they're in our program, they're matched with a mentor, a caring individual from the community who is really, their main job is to be a cheerleader and to help them, keep them encouraged, to help them, kind of keep going on those tough days. And then they're also matched with a Hope coach on our staff, and that Hope coach works with their mentor and that student to help them navigate anything that comes up. So it could be, can you help me proofread my English paper? Or it could be, I need to renew my DACA status, for example, and I need some assistance with that. Once they're in the program, we meet with them, we talk about their academic plans, we talk about anything coming up in life that could derail those plans and try to get ahead of that, work with them to address anything that may come up from a housing issue, even domestic violence, anything that might come up. And then we do trainings throughout the year. We do social events. We, for instance, during COVID, we had a drive-through holiday party where we had Santa Claus and, gifts that were donated from the community. We do wish lists twice a year, which is basically collecting tangible items from the community that we give to our scholars to help them with the financial, challenges of being a parenting college student, anything from a laptop computer to gas cards. And then we also have, as I said, mental health supports on our staff. We do a whole career readiness program. We have recognized that it's important for our scholars to not just get that college credential, but also to get that first job. So we work with our corporate partners out in the community on our whole career readiness program, and that's been really exciting. And then we also have our early childhood program, which is called Next Generation Academy. It's a home visiting program. The children of teen parents enter kindergarten at lower levels of school readiness than their peers. So our Next Generation Academy program is all about how do we help them get on track in terms of school readiness. We do developmental assessments and screenings. We work with parents to really be their child's first teacher. We bring brand new books into the home to help them build their home libraries. We give them monetary support monthly to help them access high quality childcare. And then we have group mentoring opportunities where we connect them with groups of mentors to increase their social capital. So it's really about holistic whole family supports.
So does the normal person the average person who comes to your program, are they all on their own? Do they have family support, or are they
it varies.
what's typical for that?
Yeah, it varies. Sometimes we'll see families, in our program that have really wonderful support from their family. They might be living with their parents, for example, and their parents are really 100% behind them in pursuing their college degree. We have other students in our program who have grown up in foster care and are, nearing that transition out of foster care housing. We have some in our program who have fractured relationships with their family. Some who have a parent who's been incarcerated, for most of their lives. So it really differs. And one thing I think that we also see is that the support you have today could be completely different than the support you have tomorrow. And so it's really important that we're, all of our students, we work with them on a case by case basis. We're making sure that, we're showing up for them in the way that they need, uniquely to their situation.
So we've talked about sort of teen mothers a lot, but you also accept teen fathers. And how does that work? How do you apply for that?
Yeah, so they come
what are
to
the
our
criteria
program.
you use to accept them?
The same criteria. So they, for both our teen moms and our teen fathers that come into the program, if they're not the custodial parent, they have to just they have a reference who can attest to their parental involvement, but we don't require that they have custody or anything like that. So they can apply through the same way that our moms apply. And we have some incredible fathers in our program who really fly in the face of the stereotype that, teen dads aren't engaged in their child's lives. They're not committed to their education, all of those things. We see the exact opposite. I mean, our fathers are just incredible testaments to, the perseverance, the resilience, the involvement of teen fathers everywhere. So we love having dads in our program. We want more dads in our program. And, when we look across the statistics across the country for parenting students, about 1 in 5 college students across the country is actually parenting. When you look at the stopout rates, single fathers, especially Black and Latinx or Hispanic single fathers, have the highest stopout rates of any student parent group. So, they really need the supports to stay in school and to be able to make it to the finish line.
And what percent of the clients you serve, the people you serve, are fathers?
We're very estrogen heavy. So I think we're at 122 parents, and we have, I think, 6 fathers in our program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's something that we've been passionate about. I've been passionate about since our inception. What I think we're seeing is, the My Brother's Keeper initiative that has really touched on the fact that there's this dearth of programming out there for young men, particularly young men of color. And so it's a lot easier for us to go to an organization serving single mothers or teen mothers and make a presentation about Generation Hope. It's a lot harder to find an organization or a program that specifically serves teen fathers to be able to go out and make that kind of presentation. So we're working hard. We've gotten really creative. Even in the pandemic, we've been working with barbershops and partnering with different organizations where we're hoping we'll be able to connect with some fathers. But it's an area that we want to continue to grow in.
Could you talk about one of the programs that I think you implemented it during the pandemic? It was the reading program at night that I was actually able to take a part of. I mean, talk about the thought process of creating that program and getting people involved, and how you sort of pivoted to meet the needs of the pandemic.
Yeah, so one of the things that, I mean, early on with the pandemic, one of the hardest things for us as an organization, which I know, Leadership Greater Washington is, probably felt this way too, was that we're very much an in-person, high-touch organization. We love to see our scholars. We love to see our little ones and hugs and, dancing and, all sorts of stuff. I mean, we really love to be in community in person with our scholars and their kids. It was tough for us to think about, how are we going to keep connecting with them and keep them encouraged during this difficult time. So one of the things we thought about was this virtual bedtime story series where once a week we would have guest readers do a Facebook Live book reading for our scholars and their children. And it was, not only a way to read a book with them, which is hugely important, and literacy is something that we are really big on and working on at Generation Hope with our kids, but it was also just a way for them to say, wow, someone out there cares about me and my child in this really difficult time enough to sit down and read one of their favorite bedtime stories to us. And I think that's huge for this population. It can feel like you're invisible. Most colleges and universities don't even track the parenting status of their students. So you're on your college campus. No one really knows that you're a parent. No one knows what you might be going through. It can feel like you're very invisible on a regular day, never mind in a global pandemic where you're disproportionately feeling all the impacts of this virus. So that bedtime story series was just incredible. It was a wonderful way for us to connect with people in the community and for our scholars to know that people were thinking of them. And it was awesome to have you and other LGW members joining us and doing some readings. And honestly, I would hear from people, they would read their favorite bedtime stories. I mean, these are people who are like type A personalities in their, suits. I mean, in any other, capacity, you're not thinking about them reading bedtime stories, but they would get on, Facebook Live with us and be like, this is the best part of my day. Like after a ton of Zoom meetings, like I want to sit down and read this, Berenstein Bears book or something like that. So I think it was great for us. It was great for our scholars, and it was really wonderful for our readers.
And for the readers, it was a lot of, really was a lot of fun. We enjoyed it very much. So thank you for having me do that.
You were great.
Let's talk about Leadership Greater Washington for a bit. Your class year is 2016. I will say I think your class has the best sense of humor of any class I've come across. Very, very proud of that for you all. And did you turn to any LGW members, classmates, or others during this last year, during the, since you've been in the program, to help you with any decisions, challenges, problems that you've had?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take full credit for the sense of humor for a class of 2016. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the list is long in terms of how many LGW folks have been, just really wonderful and in supporting both myself personally and the organization through COVID-19. Rebecca Linder is a board member, and she was our board president kind of going into the pandemic. And just early on, I think her insights, with her company, her events company, Linder Global Events, she, really felt early on the impacts of the pandemic. I think probably earlier than many. Because of industry. And so I remember her pulling me aside early March and saying, Nicole, this is going to be huge. And you're going to want to start thinking about, closing the office, pivoting to virtual. And I kind of thought she was a little crazy, but, it ended up being really wonderful advice because it got us early, moving into that kind of mindset. And just her counsel, I think, over the course of the pandemic has been wonderful, and just kind of someone to say, to bounce ideas off of, someone to listen. But we also have, so many of our board members are LGW folks, Valerie Clark, Maria Nagorski, Margaret Berry, Dr. Ann Kress. We look at your list and then we recruit.
That's good. That's what it's there for.
Tatiana
Yes.
Torres is another board
Just saw
member.
Tatiana the other night.
Yeah. And Rosie Allen Herring, she did a reading with us during Bedtime Stories. So between Bedtime Stories and again, just people being in support of the organization, and then Mahan, I want to make sure I say his name right,
Tavakoli.
Yep. Was so wonderful to interview me for an upcoming podcast around Pregnant Girl. And so just so many people from the LGW community who have been supportive of the book, of the organization, and of me personally.
It's nice, those contacts, those friendships that the friendships that you make during your year, and then you can expand to other members from other class years. It really is a very special thing that we have at Leadership Greater Washington. Very proud of it. Very proud of our members.
Yep, definitely. And in the class this year, Michael Aiken is a good friend and a wonderful supporter of Generation Hope as well. So I'm always excited to see the new list come out and to see who's joining the family.
It's a good class this year. We're very excited about it. So I think it's gonna be a lot.
Not as funny.
They will not be as funny as your class, but they will. I've already determined that, but they're a very good class. So you've gone through an awful lot in a very short period of time in terms of your life.
Yeah.
What leadership lessons do you have? What did you learn during the pandemic? I remember when we shut our offices down, I figured we'd be out for 2 weeks and then be back. And how crazy was that? So things changed quite a bit. But anything during the pandemic, anything during your whole life cycle that you would want to share with us?
Oh gosh, that's a big one. I'll focus on just the pandemic. There were so many lessons that I'm still learning, I think, through COVID. I think one thing, when the pandemic first started unfolding, we were also beginning our strategic planning process. And it felt, I remember as a board and as a staff, we thought, is this the right time to be planning for 3 years out when we don't even know, as you said, Doug, will we be back in the office next month? And then also as a nonprofit organization, nonprofits have really been hit hard by COVID-19 and, the ability to fundraise and forecast and all of that. And so it was definitely a time of uncertainty. And I think we were wondering, is this the right time? Should we push off strategic planning? And we decided that it was really a time for us to dream big and to really be bold in what we wanted to envision the world to look like. And part of that was because we were seeing the suffering, particularly for the community that we serve. It was so significant that it felt like, yes, there is uncertainty, but there's a tremendous amount of need. And we did decide to go ahead and push forward with our strategic planning process. And we ultimately approved one of the most ambitious trajectories for the organization that was on the table, and certainly in our 10-year history. And it was probably the best decision I think we could have made. It was the right thing to do. It was really answering the call that is out there for all of us right now, which is to do more. And it also was, in the midst of this difficult time for our staff and our board, it was exciting, to focus on what the world could look like and what our role could be in creating change. So it was energizing and uplifting, I think, for our entire community during a time where there was so much difficulty happening around us. So that was, a lesson for me. It was, I think, reinforced the call for all of us: when things are difficult, you do more as opposed to doing less.
I really agree with that. What struck me was that all these barriers are sort of being broken, and you had the capacity to rethink your programming, your services, your offering, your supports, and do them differently and do new ones and do them in a better way. And we certainly did that in Washington. We have, during the pandemic, we had, I think, more and better programming than we've ever had in our history. So it was
Awesome.
you hate to say it's about a pandemic, but in some ways it was exciting leading an organization and adapting and pivoting and changing to make your offerings meet the demands of the day. And now now that we're starting to come back together, we're re-looking at that as well and trying to change some things also. So there's never a dull moment, that's for sure.
No, never, never.
Well, Nicole, I want to thank you so much for your time with us today. I really, really appreciate it. It's great to see you again. Great to talk with you. Best wishes to you and your organization and your book and your family and all that good stuff. And I will leave you with the final word.
I would just say, I think like leading off of what we just said, this is a time for us to kind of reimagine, the way that we've done things. And I think at Generation Hope, we're certainly doing that. We're encouraging our partners to do that. And we work with, colleges and universities and their supportive students who are parenting. And, my son just started kindergarten. He's 5 years old. And I picked him up from the bus stop a couple weeks ago. And, I asked him, what'd you do at school today? And he was so annoyed. He said, the same thing we do every day. And I'm like, what's that? And he's like, we keep talking to this flag. And I realized he meant the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, that is so funny.
Which is something that, because I've recited it every day of my life through my academic career, I never questioned it. But it was such a reminder to me that, just like him, like we need to look at everything we do with these fresh eyes.
Yeah.
We need to, ask ourselves, challenge the norms, challenge the things that we've come to accept and say, why does it have to be this way? And so I think that's what we're trying to do at Generation Hope. And I know Leadership Greater Washington is doing that and definitely encourage others to as well.
Well, Nicole, thank you again. It was a wonderful conversation. As I said, great to see you. I want to thank PNC Bank for sponsoring these conversations. We're very thankful for their support for Leadership Greater Washington. And I would encourage all of you who have been part of this conversation today to please fill out the evaluation form and please come to some of our upcoming events. Nicole, thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you.